Welcome back, tribe. I have an episode here from this dude. His name is Jacob Whelan, and he says why he gave up on getting married and starting a family. He's got less than 3K subs. The dude in his video almost got 100,000 viewers. Let's see what's going on here.
Always assumed I'd get married, have kids, start a family. That's actually one of the reasons why I built this house as big as it is. It's over 3,000 square foot because I figured that if I'm going to have a family, I need someplace to put them. But over the years, my mindset on that has completely changed. I'm 40 years old now, and I've basically given up on the idea of starting a family. And there's a few reasons for that. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of guys out there that can relate to this. And that's why I'm making this video, because it has become increasingly difficult for a guy to confidently go into a relationship and be okay with getting married, having kids, and starting a family. One of the primary reasons for me, aside from the fact that I'm 40 years old now and I'm kind of stuck in my ways, but I decided several years ago that the idea of having a family is pretty much not going to happen. Because, number one, there's a lot of crazy indoctrination that's going on with kids and stuff these days in schools. The stuff they're teaching kids is just freaking abhorrent, and I do not agree with any of it. They're pushing all these sexual agendas and all these crazy ideologies in schools now. And when you're a parent and you're sending your kid off to school, that's all this time that you don't have with the kid, because it's up to you as a parent to shape your kid into the person you want to become and to teach them right from wrong and essentially protect them from all the things that you don't want them to see. But when they're in school, you can't do that. And the only alternative to that is private schooling or homeschooling. But then, with homeschooling, you're taking your kid away from the social interaction and all the things they be learning when they're in school, as far as how to socialize with people, how to make friends, how to deal with people in general. And that's a very important part of life.
That's also a conversation I've had with my wife about, what should we do? Should we stay in Europe? Should we go to America? The conversation about family and giving your kids the best head start. The answer is, when you compare it to the rest of the world, unless you're somewhere like cutting edge that can match the United States, but without so much social degeneracy in terms of like crime and like horrible public services and, badly run cities and, policies that are causing a bunch of issues with dilapidated bridges, holes in fucking streets and shit that your car's rims get jacked up on. Switzerland. The answer is like Switzerland. Or, something like Norway, in a smaller town where you're away from the city's degenerate, like, mass migration policies. But they're uber woke there, too. So, it's like, where do you go to get a decent education for your kids and a decent head start in life? It's only America, dude, that I know. I'm sure there are other places, maybe like academies in the Middle East, but you're going to start doling out a ton of money, and it comes with its own problems living there. You're a second-class citizen. And so if you go to the United States, you can go off into a boony town, like kind of, I don't know if he doesn't look like he's in the boonies. I don't know. But you can go away from the city in America, homeschool your kids, and they can still go to an elite institution, assuming they're in STEM, assuming you taught them well, and, they have brains for this stuff. Or just become entrepreneurial in nature, teach your kids about the value of money in a business and exchange of goods and services, supply and demand. Start teaching them to make things, build things with their hands. The American market's still bigger than ever, and made in America is going to be more popular than ever now with tariffs. So, we're leaning heavily into America because economically Europe's dying. It's being choked by bureaucracy. To start a business here, to make anything of yourself, you're really relegated to the country you're living in. And then to expand borders, it means you have to basically top down start something new completely in a different language. You have to deal with very complicated border and exchange rules when it comes to VAT taxes and, all this other bullshit. But America's simple, bro. If you want to make a product in Arizona, you could sell it to Georgia. You could sell it to Alaska. You could sell it to Hawaii and every other state in between in continental U.S. There's no separate regulations for each state. There's no separate tax system. There's no, nothing insane that makes the process really cumbersome. Or when you need to expand and grow a team and maybe have somebody service, a transportation hub in, let's just say, Atlanta, Georgia, they all speak the same language, come from the same country, have the same legalese that you would have to go through hiring an employee. But if you want to, as a Romanian company, hire and start a team out in Sweden or some shit, I could only imagine the nightmare you would go through. And that hampers growth, man. And that's the downfall of the EU model versus the Federation of America, essentially. Definitely a conversation to be had. For me, personally, the only reason I'm coming back or, really thinking about coming back is honestly this. I am not about to invest in a ton of kids, all my time and effort for them to have a shitty start, or they'll end up leaving in faraway lands for opportunities anyway. So once you have to make these kinds of choices, you're kind of, like that's what I say about Passport Bros, dude. It's the ball game changes completely. Once you actually have a woman and once you actually start family planning and talk about kids, like the game changes completely. Now you have to think about more than yourself. Where are you safest? What are the rules and legislations that are being passed? How safe is it in your community to walk out at night alone? How safe is the local community for your children? What drugs will they have access to? What kind of criminal enterprises are around? What kind of future, opportunities will they have when it comes to elite institutions, when it comes to work, even a normal job? Say they don't want to be entrepreneurs, but will they have a normal job? Is there something available? I don't know. Depends on the countries you're willing to go to. Depends what your budget is. Some guys are okay. Like, I spoke to a dude that lives in the Philippines and another one that lives in Thailand. Both of them had girlfriends, wives, actually. And kids were on the menu. One had 2 already. One was expecting very shortly. And the conversation came up of like, I want the best future for my kids. Therefore, they're going to have United States citizenships. They're going to the embassies. Well, the one whose kid's on the way is going to the embassy immediately. The one in the other country already went to the embassy and he's got his, dual citizenship for his kids. And, you know, once the kids get a little older, they're going back to the States, both of them, because they see, like, you could live in the expat bubble, but your children's future is not going to be as bright.
So it's kind of a give or take. But, for me, the idea that my kid's going to be stuck in school, learning all this crazy stuff and not getting the proper education, especially not the education that I would like to see them get, which would be like critical thinking, life skills, finance, money, skill trade, all these very important things in life that they really don't teach in school. So that was a big thing for me. And just the direction of the world, the crazy way the world was going for a while and kind of still is in a way, I couldn't imagine bringing a kid up in that because I myself find it hard enough to navigate sometimes. I went through a bunch of crazy stuff with my health. I know all about suffering and what it's like to feel completely lost, hopeless, have no sense of direction, no purpose. You can't find meaning in life. And, I've suffered from anxiety and depression and all these horrible things. And that was hard for me. So the idea that I would have a kid and bring them up in this crazy world and possibly have them suffer through a lot of the same crazy things that I suffered through is just something that I decided I'm not willing to live with. And another big reason is because as a guy, going into a relationship, getting married and stuff, it comes with a lot of risk. And it's no fault of our own. It's no fault of the male or the female sex. It's the way the court system's set up. It's the way our society is geared in general. It's geared in favor of the woman. If a family gets divorced, most of the time, the woman's going to come out on top. And as somebody who has established a very good life for myself, I'm financially secure, I'm debt-free, I own my own home, I've accomplished a lot of fantastic things in my life. So going into a relationship and getting married comes with a significant amount of risk. That's true for me and pretty much every other guy out there. And again, it's no fault of our own. It's just the way society is geared. They've made it a point to destroy the nuclear family, to tear the family unit apart, and I think it's all by design. I don't think they want us to have a strong family unit, and it seems like everything in our modern society is set up that way. When you get a divorce, pretty much all your stuff goes to the woman, or at the very least gets split 50-50. And if you've worked your entire life, especially as a guy being the provider, to provide all this stuff for your family, and if you come into that relationship having a lot of things and having established a very good life for yourself, you could have all that stripped away. And in a lot of cases, it could be borderline impossible to ever get that back. Because again, the guy is usually stuck paying child support or alimony or both. So his wages now become significantly less, and his ability to regain all the things that he's lost, especially if he's at the midpoint in his life or later in life, because the way the career field is set up is that it favors young, impressionable men or young, impressionable people in general. Because when you have an older person coming into the workforce, especially trying to start a new career, they have old habits. And a lot of companies don't want to try and train those old habits out of a person. They would rather hire somebody young that they can train from the ground up, that's going to show up to work bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're going to have energy. They're going to last many, many years in the workforce. And taking on an older person can just, in a lot of cases, be a liability. And another terrible thing that often happens, especially in family court, is that the dad ends up going from being 100% dad, he's there for his family all the time, to all of a sudden you get a divorce and he becomes a 15% dad. And the thought that I wouldn't be able to see my kid every single day or whenever I wanted, and I would be granted visitation rights like I'm some sort of criminal, is a terrifying thought. And another big reason is just because I am a result of not only my own life experiences, but of the life experiences that occur around me. And I've seen
Yep.
this stuff happen time and time again. There are very few people in my life that have stayed successfully married throughout their entire lives and haven't had happen a lot of the things that I just mentioned. And as somebody who has spent half their life building this life for myself and making it as secure as possible and setting myself up in the
These are valid concerns. Why would you risk getting married to an American woman in an American court system? I understand. This is why passport bros exist. This is why men go overseas. This is why the digital nomad shit exists. Expat lifestyle. This is why, man. Men are driven to get women. They make up an important part of our lives, whether we like to admit it or not. And being a head of a household is something majority of the men would like to be. But when you do the analysis the same way he's doing, you understand that it's almost impossible for you to come out ahead. So men rather not. And what's plan B? How do you get out from these horrible odds? You go overseas and you get yourself a traditional woman. You increase your odds if you stay in the other countries, or if you bring them back, you better have like rock solid vetting or an ability to protect your assets in some way. And that's it, dude. That's the last hope that men have, is the passport bro stuff. And it's essentially just saying, listen, dude, don't piss away all your hard work by risking marriage to a highly feminized masculine woman that you don't even know. You don't actually realize just how masculine and defeminized modern women in the West are until you go overseas and mind-blowing shit starts happening. Like your woman rubs your shoulders, you didn't ask. Your woman cooks for you, asks you if you're hungry 1,000,000 times a day. You didn't even ask. You wake up and there's a coffee or a tea ready. You didn't even ask. Thanks you for all the hard work you do. Thanks you on dates. These women thank you for going on dates with them. Will actually put in effort in conversations, buy you things, appreciate you, understand the masculine value. Don't try to compete with you. Don't yell at you. Don't argue with you. Don't try to bully you out of your authority in a relationship. Don't try to act like boss babe, independent woman, bullshit mentality. That doesn't exist in these parts of the world. Southeast Asia, parts of Latin America, parts of Eastern Europe. They don't. And it's refreshing for any man that's ever had to deal with a Western modern woman and the feminist mentality that they're endowed with. Ask any guy. They'll tell you in the comment section, dude. So I would never say I'd give up on marriage and starting a family. What I would add, because I've been overseas now and I've seen it myself. If I lived in America the entire time, bro, fuck it. I'm pumping and dumping. I'll be honest. There's no way. And without a prenup, there's just no way, dude. It's almost impossible unless you meet a chick that's like immigrated to the United States and still is like a first generation immigrant. That's it, dude. That's it. And that's lucky because essentially the world came to you. Okay. But apart from that, you're fucked. And that's the reality. So it's like, do the math here, bro. Math isn't mathing, as they say.
best way that I possibly can. The thought of having that stripped away because of divorce is something I am just not willing to live with. It's a risk I'm not willing to take. And don't get me wrong, like my parents, they're still happily married. They've been married my entire life. They'll never get divorced. I've got family members that are still happily married. They were married their entire lives and they never got divorced. A lot of this stuff didn't happen for them. But for the younger generation, I see it time and time again. And it seems like the odds of somebody having a happy, healthy relationship, staying married and not having all these horrible things happen is getting more and more rare. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think social media plays a huge role in that.
Big.
We all get focused on the next shiny object syndrome. You know, something nice, new, and fancy comes along and we want to trade up. All of a sudden, what we have isn't good enough. We're led to believe we need all this nice stuff, and everybody's perception of everyone else's lives online is that everybody's living this perfect life.
I have a theory because I was recently in the dating market, obviously, until before I got married and met her. I think younger women now, not saying all, but I noticed a significant portion are way worse. We're talking 19 through 23. Are significantly worse than, say, 25 to 30. Significantly worse. Something about the younger generation that grew up with social media, especially in this day and age, like TikTok, Facebook for them is some shit old people use, but like Instagram and now OnlyFans and all the degeneracy that they have access to online has done something to their brains and their abilities to be happy, to even communicate, to have standards that are not outworldly, and to appreciate a man, because the toxicity that they're consuming has warped their minds to such an extent. I'm glad that I got to see it myself, because even overseas, some of the younger ones, 19 through 22, 3 years old, have been, if you're in a capital city overseas, you're not safe, period. 19 to 23, the TikTok, the social media brain rot, all the shit that they're consuming has completely mind controlled them. It's game over. They're worse off than their peers that are 5, 6, 7 years older than them. Markedly worse. Leagues worse. It's crazy that listen, I met chicks here in Romania that couldn't cook, which is fucking mind blowing, or very basic at cooking. Obviously, still leagues ahead. This is how bad America is. Still leagues ahead of your average American woman, but like wouldn't hold a candle to my woman now. And there's only a few years age gap there. But 19, they're practically mentally retarded, just being completely honest. They grew up entirely, their entire formative years, the most important part of their identity, discovery, and who they were in the world, and where they get their confidence from, their mannerisms from, all from TikTok. What do you think that does to somebody's brain? As opposed to some chick that's, say, 27 years old that didn't grow up on that shit, doesn't care about it, was less connected, more from the countryside, couldn't afford an iPhone from the get-go, all that shit. Versus a chick that's 19. Because I know we have this conversation in the red pill and manosphere in general and all this shit, like younger better, 19, prime, 22, 19 through 22 is like prime. Yeah, until social media came out. Like biologically, prime, sure. But psychologically, 100 times worse than a chick that's 5 years older than the 19-year-old or the 22-year-old. I've seen it in the women I've dated. I've seen how these girls talk, how they interact with each other, the shit they say out loud, walking by, the conversations they have sitting in the park. It's fucking maddening, dude. And they are the ones that are the most radical of them all, at least with the brainwashing. And that's why you're seeing that divergence, at least in the United States, but even in Korea as well. Like men are curving down super conservative and women are curving way up, going super liberal. The young ones are they're getting fed the messaging, and they're gobbling that shit up. There's no guardrails for this. So I think if you're a man and you're going overseas, unless you somehow find the one unicorn that's super young and hasn't had an iPhone attached to her fucking arm surgically, I would say just skew a few years older than that. Try to get one that didn't grow up, maybe as 25 through 27, 28, whatever. I didn't grow up in this fucking technological age that's so embedded in their identity today. Word of advice from what I've noticed. Do what you want. For the dudes that got lucky with a, say, 19, 20-year-old, by all means, bro. We're not saying don't try. But what I'm saying is I've noticed like markedly worse red flags in the younger women.
You only see the highlights on these Instagram reels and on social media. You never see the ups and downs. So your expectations become exponentially higher. And then when it comes to things like sex and intimate relationships, we expect so much more because we've been watching porn and we see all this crazy, these crazy sexual experiences on TV, and everybody's cheating on their husbands and wives, and we just think that's the way it should be. So when it comes to going in the bedroom, we have these super high porn star expectations that can never be met. We objectify the opposite sex. We think that it has to be some crazy, awesome experience every time we have an intimate relationship. But what we've done is we've hyper-stimulated ourselves with all this content and all this media that throughout all of history we would have never had access to. And it's completely rewired and screwed up our brains. That's the bottom line, is that the stuff we're exposed to is not natural. Mm-hmm. The stuff that we see is not stuff that we should be seeing, especially not in the amounts that we're seeing it. We're not meant to have this level of pleasure and dopamine hits and instant gratification in the way that we do in the modern age. And that has completely skewed our view of the world, especially when it comes to relationships. And what it boils down to is I think it's essentially stripped away our moral fabric. It's taken away our values and our ethics in general. And I think it's really caused us to lose respect for our partners. And I see that in relationships all the time too, is that partners don't really respect each other in the way that they used to. it's a different world than what we used to live in 50 to 100 years ago. It's become so easy now to just throw in the towel and to just give up and walk away, knowing that you're going to be financially secure. You're going to walk away with at least half. You're going to, get the kids, or you're going to get split custody. You're going to get half the money. You're going to get whatever. And you're going to be able to just walk away with no ramifications and start your new life, your new relationship. And it's all going to be fine and dandy. Whereas that used to not be the case, and people weren't so eager to do that before we've gotten caught in this modern, materialistic, commoditized society, because everything has become commoditized, including relationships. And that's a terrible thing, because I think it's really just taken us away from what is natural. It's pulled us away from the family unit. The man is no longer there to support the family, which throughout all of history, the man played a very important role in the family because he was the protector. He was the provider. And that is simply not the case now, because the man can be stripped away from the family unit, and essentially the family doesn't need a man to get by. And don't get me wrong, that is a great thing from a woman's perspective, because it makes the woman independent. And I think women should be independent. They should be completely empowered to live the life of their dreams and to go after all the things they want. And they should not have to be tethered to a man. And that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that a lot of these ideologies that we've adopted around splitting apart the family unit has really led to the detriment of relationships in general. Because the fact of the matter is, when you get into a relationship, and every relationship I've ever gotten into,
the irony is, though, that giving people a choice, they tend to make the bad one. So give women the freedom of choice, but also educate them better so they make more correct choices. That's the part they don't want to talk about, though. Most women are getting caught up in the propaganda of working themselves to death, having no family whatsoever, regretting they became career women, being forced to end up being the cat lady, wishing they took a different path, and then either become jaded or disconnected from reality because the biological clock ended their ability. And nobody tells them that once you get a barren womb, or once it's hard for you to get pregnant in general, that in vitro isn't even that successful. The success rate is horrendous, and it costs potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not like you could just freeze your eggs and then be super successful later. It sucks still. It's not a guarantee. And nobody tells you this. Yeah, you go, queen, work yourself to death, be a slave for a corporation, another man. Pay out all your profits to the IRS. Completely neglect your biological duties of wanting kids. And see how happy you are to have your name on the wall, the plaque on the wall. That's why women, more naturally than men, seek out work-life balance for a reason. They don't want to be slaves to work. A man will literally identify with his job as a self-reference for his worth. The higher his position, the better he feels. The more money he earns, the more prestige he has. Shit like that. But a woman doesn't give a fuck about the same things. Like, once a woman has a kid, like, her career is the furthest thing she cares. That's her kid. She's at work thinking about the kid. She doesn't want to be separated from her kid, her baby. She wants to be a stay-at-home mother. Fuck this career. I'll come back later. Like, it's natural, though. It's not a bad thing. But inform them so they can make their own informed decision instead of letting them all drive off a cliff. And then we're all faced with the consequences of this shit. Ta-da, you have society today. And don't get me wrong, it's happening to men, too. Men are being driven right off a cliff with other certain behaviors I won't mention here, but we talked about them plenty of times before. Men have their own issues, but certainly we both have issues.
I think it's fundamentally important to support your partner, to have respect for your partner. You should respect your partner in the same way that you would want to be respected. You should build your partner up, not tear them down. It should be about making each other a better version of yourselves than you were when you came into the relationship. That's what a relationship is meant to do. It's meant to support each other. It's meant for being there for one another through the good times and the bad. You should encourage your partner to chase after their dreams, to go after the things in life they want, to enjoy their hobbies, to do things that don't always include you. And that's another thing I often see, is that a lot of people get very codependent and they become very reliant on the other person. And the moment that they step out and want to do something outside of what they're doing every single day, the other person gets mad. And that can really hold you back. It can hold you back from life. It can hold you back from pursuing your dreams, from doing the things that you're passionate about, and just enjoying life in general. And the idea of being held back and held down and tied to someone else and not being able to do all the things in life I want to do without somebody else getting mad because of that, that for me is another very terrifying thing. Because if you have to give up your hobbies and you have to give up some of the things you enjoy, and your partner gets mad because you want to do those things, you're essentially giving up a part of yourself. And that's the type of stuff that will eventually lead to you resenting your partner. But in the modern age, as soon as we hit a rocky patch, we're just willing to give up. We throw in the towel and we completely destroy the family over something that's probably extremely petty and could, in most cases, be completely avoided. So because of the way our modern world's set up, because of the way things are designed, the court systems, and the next shiny object syndrome, and all this instant gratification that we have, and everybody just wanting to jump to the next nicest thing and upgrading, these are the reasons why I've given up on the idea of starting a family. After working almost 20 years, half my life, to build the life of my dreams, the life I have now, to go into a relationship and get married with a very high probability of that not working out and me losing everything that I've worked so hard to build is not a risk that I'm willing to take. So if you're a guy out there and you're watching this and this resonates with you and you can relate to this, let me know in the comments down below. If you have experience with this, let me know down in the comments below, because I'm very curious to hear what y'all have to say about this. I know I'm not alone in feeling this way, because I know there's a big black-pilled and men go their own way movement going on right now. And while I don't take it that far, I don't completely swear off women and dating, and I'm not against having relationships, the idea of getting married and starting a family is not something I'm willing to do, which is a terrible thing, because again, I think that's the way it's designed. That is exactly what they want. And the unfortunate thing is they're essentially getting what they want. If they want less people to start families and have kids, it's what they've gotten. And while this can sound kind of disheartening, I don't want to make this video all doom and gloom, and that's not what this is about, because there is a silver lining to this. And that silver lining is that when you remove all expectations from a relationship and you go into a relationship with just the idea of wanting to get to know the person on a deeper level, wanting to build a connection and establish something meaningful together, with no expectations of getting married or having a family, and not having that idea being held over your head and having to live up to those expectations, expecting that one day you're going to eventually get there. From my experience, it can really help you establish a much deeper connection with another person. Because when you remove those expectations, it takes a lot of pressure off both you and your partner. It removes that worry and that self-doubt that you might otherwise have. It keeps you from trying so hard and forcing the relationship to go in a direction that you want it to go, which essentially makes the relationship more organic. It makes it more natural. And that's an amazing thing, because if you're forcing the relationship to go in a certain direction, the other person may be opposed to it, but they may go along with it. And that can string you along in a relationship that may eventually go nowhere, essentially wasting both of your time. But by removing all those expectations and all that stress and letting things happen more naturally, the relationship is going to go in the direction it's meant to go. And by removing that burden from yourself and all that pressure, it really frees you up to go after the things in life that you want. If you have a dream, if you have goals,
I have a dream.
You're completely free to chase them. You don't have to worry about somebody else. You don't have to worry about a partner or somebody that's depending on you. You can pick up, you can move across the country, you can pursue your passions and your dreams no matter what and how big they are. The sky is the limit. And when you don't have somebody else that depends on you, you're your own limiting factor. And that is very, very powerful, because every single one of us holds the power to wake up in the morning, start a new day, and create the life of our dreams. And another amazing part to this silver lining is that when you're not tethered to somebody else and you're not codependent and you're alone, you can learn what it is to be truly happy with yourself and to love yourself without needing somebody else, because you will never be happy or truly love someone else until you learn to love yourself.
That's true.
Until you learn
That's
to be
true.
happy with yourself, by yourself. And that is something I've found true for myself, because there was a time where I swore off dating, I swore off women for 3 years. And those were some of the best 3 years of my life. I learned so much about myself, and all those things I just mentioned, I accomplished. Now I can be completely alone, just me and my dog, and I'm just as happy, if not happier, than I would be if I was in a relationship with somebody else. Growing up,
I mean, nailed it. What can you say, dude? This is literally all the problems modern men are talking about constantly. Oh, God. Jordan Peterson crying again? Of course he is. What happened to this dude? I guess we'll cover parts of that. Comments are all making jokes like living with the dog. I'm only 21, but the amount of things that I've seen and heard from those around me definitely makes me think twice, of course. To just listening to men on social media. Jeez. Experienced divorce lawyer here. I don't know one successful, single, fit, ambitious man over 40 who is single and unhappy. Not one. Well, you also don't know any of the successful married men over 40 that are fit and doing well, crushing it in their household either. They wouldn't be in your purview. Yeah, they don't make them like they used to. Old-fashioned religious woman here. Made sacrifices for the good of the relationship, but was rewarding long-term, and we started out with little and built up a good life together. Don't have false ideas of the modern world teachings. Content with a good man and a friend for life. 42 years and still trucking. Indeed. Building and growing together is how it should be. Yep. So my wife and I of 33 years salute you guys. Thank God for the life before the internet. I told you. Yeah, man. Things have changed dramatically. You do have to go overseas. If I had to come back single to America, I wouldn't be dating seriously at all. It's a shit show. Unless, like I said, I met somehow a first gen immigrant. They just came. She's got an accent, strong family ties, very traditional family, real father that's actually present, head of the household, yada, yada, all that. So that's the only thing I would ever consider. I would not do anybody that is enthralled in modern American culture, period. That's a huge risk, and I would not take it. As usual, boys, if you appreciate this one, let me know. Also, if you haven't, subscribe over to the second channel, search it, Bo Refek right here, and check out some of the fire episodes we've been putting out. We're talking about everything from dating to the testosterone crisis to, why young men are opting out of society, and they're all getting a lot of traction very quickly. So, and they're all resonating. It's all deep value content. I just sit here, talk to you guys kind of like on a couch and go through a lot of stuff. Or I do, episodes like this where you get to see the kind of conversations we're having within the private community. So if any of that interests you, by all means, links in the description to join. Check out the second channel. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. As usual, signing out. See you tomorrow for the next one. Take care, guys.